Today I'm going to tell you about all the different ways that you could identify if you have toxic mold in your home. Hi, I'm Michael Rubino, indoor air quality expert, and I have helped thousands of people create healthy environments, especially those dealing with illness. One of the first things that you actually need to look for is the obvious water damage like signs, such as crackling or bubbling paint. Unfortunately, that means that moisture is getting behind the paint and it's through the drying processes cracking or pushing the paint outward, bubbling. Now, mold only takes 24 to 48 hours. Similar with bacteria. So if you see these signs, it means that water is getting there in fact, and because drywall touches things like insulation or the 2x4 behind it, unfortunately, we have what's called trapped moisture, where that drywall can stay wet far longer than 48 hours. Meaning, we likely have some toxic mold brewing behind there. Another sign to look out for in the nature of drywall is that coffee-like ring stain that we see on ceilings or on walls. Similar to the crackling or bubbling paint, this coffee-like stain is usually rust being pulled through, creating that stain in that water-like pattern. Most of us think that mold has to be black to be toxic. Well, no, unfortunately that's incorrect. Aspergillus, which is typically white in color, which by the way, blends right into our white ceilings pretty easily, can be toxigenic as well because certain species of Aspergillus can produce mycotoxins known as ochratoxin A. Same thing with penicillium. Penicillium can produce mycophenolic acid or aflatoxin. Now, if you're not familiar with mycophenolic acid, it's actually what we create immune suppressant drugs out of when people are getting organ transplants. Why? So their body doesn't reject the new organ. But in our living environment, if we're not undergoing major surgeries, how much mycophenolic acid do we want to be inhaling on a regular basis? Not a lot. Therefore, we want to actually reduce the amount of penicillium we're being exposed to in our environment, so we're not constantly inhaling antibiotics. A huge thing that we want to check for in our homes is the relative humidity. You see, molds like Aspergillus and penicillium, which we just talked about could be toxic, can grow in as quickly as 24 to 48 hours, only requiring 60% or more in relative humidity, which if you live in a tropical area like myself, I live in Florida, it's pretty hard to keep that humidity level under control. Now, we also want to be cognizant of humidity in subgrade spaces like basements or crawl spaces. Now, even though basements or crawl spaces you might not go into all the time, it still impacts 30% or more of the quality of air that you're breathing right above it on that first or second floor. Therefore, we want to take it seriously even if we don't go down there. Now, another symptom to look for that you usually associate with crawl spaces and basements actually is that musty odor. That musty odor is called MVOCs or microbial VOCs. And actually, you only smell that odor when the mold is fully alive, colonized, and eating. That is its burps or farts, if you will. So when you smell that smell, you know you have a problem. And the problem with that is it's impacting the quality of air you're breathing, which is impacting your health. So you don't want to have those things, you don't want to smell those smells, and you don't want to see that humidity rise too high. All right, I'm going to give you a much more subtle sign that I think is really important, and it's rusted nails. So I'll give you an example. The house that I'm filming in right now, the wall directly in front of me actually, I took the baseboard off. And the reason I did that is because we were putting in new floors. And when I took the baseboard off, I noticed 3 in a row rusted nails. I said, knowing my experience and seeing this happen before in people's homes, this is a problem. We opened up the wall. What we found was an entire wall infested with termites, water damage, and wood rot. We ended up having to hire a contractor to rebuild the entire wall, 2x6s and all. And this is all off of 3 little rusted nails, because rust requires moisture. You know what else requires moisture? Termites, mold, wood rot, you name it. So that little rusted nail or that little rusted corner bead, this goes for anybody who's changing molding around that can see these things. You will notice that it is a blaring sign to open things up further to inspect. And when you do, you will always see just the tip of the iceberg and find a larger problem behind it. If you see your windows or your HVAC vents dripping wet, Houston, we have a problem, because that condensation will allow for things like toxic mold to grow, especially if it happens over time. When we see those things occurring, we need to understand, is it properly insulated? Sometimes you see windows condensating because they didn't insulate around the frame of the window. Sometimes you see condensation developing on HVAC vents because the metal boot connection right behind the vent, what actually secures the vent into, wasn't insulated. So you have this 55-degree air blowing through the vents, and you have the warm air around the surrounding, and that temperature differential creates condensation, much like 3rd grade science class, if we can remember the condensation on the outside of the glass. One of the, I would say, free hacks I've become famous for is the toilet hack. And this is because noticing thousands of homes that have had high levels of mold and bacteria, people being sick inside of them, and me being hired to figure out what's going on in their home and how do I fix it. Every single home that had such high levels of mold where somebody was not feeling well, you noticed that there was mold in their toilet tanks. So you should pause this video right now, walk over to every single toilet tank in your house, take that cover off, you know, the heavy lid that sits on the tank, flip it over, look at the underside of the lid, and peer into the toilet tank and look inside the toilet tank. If you see mold growing there, that means that it is already abundant in the air that is opportunistically getting inside that tank. And now you can clearly see that there might be some toxic mold in the environment that you might want to handle. Now, if you are a science nerd like me and you want scientific answers, not just looking at some of the signs that I've given you, well, here's how you scientifically tell if your home has toxic mold. You buy and you do a dust test. If you go to thedusttest.com right now, you can have the dust test shipped right to your house. It is so easy to use. You do not have to be a scientist. It is made for consumers. It's gonna come in a package. You're gonna take out a sealed Swiffer cloth. You're gonna collect dust from all around your house. You're gonna send it back into the lab. The lab's gonna analyze it using PCR technology. So it is DNA-specific analysis, analyzing your dust. Why your dust? Well, because unlike air tests, which only test a small circumference of about 75 milliliters of air, this test screens your entire house, well, wherever you're collecting the dust anyway, to understand what you're breathing in, because whatever is in your dust is getting into your body, you see. And through that, we can look at all these different species of mold, bacteria, toxins, and we could say, is it 10 times higher than normal? Is it normal? Is it 100 times higher than normal? Is it 1,000 times higher than normal? And by looking at that information, we could actually pair that with mycotoxin tests of our body by doing things like a mycotoxin panel or doing things like an organic acid test with our doctor, and then correlating the house results with the body results. This is all new technology that's been developed over the last 10 years that helps us understand directly if our home is impacting our health so that we can then take action and do something about it. Hopefully with this video, I've empowered you to look for signs of mold inside your home, to get the data if you're interested in it, and to take the next step to create a healthy environment, which is what we're here to do. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and let's keep pushing this mission of making the world a better place, making sure that people like you and I breathe clean air and live happier, healthier lives.